How do you do? This is Bill Keller. Bill, I want to thank you for appearing today to talk to us about a very, very interesting topic. Your topic deals with the advances in the medical engineering that has developed devices that not only measure a patient's conditions, but speeds the recording and the dissemination of that information to medical professionals, which then asks for early diagnosis and early treatment. It sounds very technical, but it sounds amazing that we can go past a couple sheets of paper that get passed around the medical profession. Now it's electronic, engineering, and it's instantaneous almost. So, Bill, could you maybe give us a little bit of an idea how you would define your work to a layperson who is not very much into engineering?
So my role is to work at hospitals on behalf of my company to come in and engineer and design a solution that takes all of the data that is being generated digitally, the radiology data, the cardiology data, and any aspect of a hospital that is creating data, to bring all that data into a series of servers, to store that data, to then be able to present that data to people that can read and interpret that information, to allow them to create reports, and then to link that information to the electronic medical record so that all of the clinicians in that entire hospital can see those images. So if you can take all of that data and get it published to any physician throughout the enterprise, that's very powerful, and that allows studies and their results to lead to very quick treatment to patients.
And is this type of technology in use today anywhere?
Yeah, it's all over here in the state of Colorado. In fact, all over in the United States. I've had the privilege of designing systems here in Denver, Kaiser Permanente, the solution they use, or you can have the image done at any of their 30 imaging centers. The data comes in to a centralized center, gets read, and then the reports get published where 4,000 or 5,000 clinicians have access to that data. I've done some work for the VA hospital where 9 VA hospitals all share data so that if a study is generated at VA Denver, it might be read at VA Salt Lake. If there's a specialist at VA Denver and the study was done up in Montana, the study can be read down in Denver. So the goal of this technology is to move the data, not the people, and to get that data in front of the most important, the best person to make the decision for treatment, regardless of where that physician may be. So if you can get the data digital, you can move it, and when you move it, you can get it in front of the right person.
There was an article in the previous issue of the AARP magazine just a month or so ago, not necessarily dealing specifically what you've been explaining here, but to looking at what can be happening with all of the electronic and IP or IT technicians and available sources today, how the future of medicine is going to speed up and more accurately analyze a patient's situation, and as you say, get it to the right experts. And what you're saying has been around. I believe it was one of the hospitals, the Cleveland Clinic.
Yeah, that's right. So we do a lot of work with the Cleveland Clinic, and they're one of the top cardiovascular hospitals in the world. And what they've been able to do is that when a patient has a stroke, it's been determined that if you can get medical treatment to that patient with the proper drugs within an hour, you can basically, make great strides on limiting the effects of that stroke. So what the Cleveland Clinic has done is they have a special ambulance so that when the call comes in from 911, it triages the call and says this is a possible stroke patient. So they send this ambulance. The ambulance, inside the ambulance has a small CAT scanner, which is a device where you would put the patient's head in and it would do quick x-rays, slices of the head, and would determine whether it would help, the images that would be created would be able to help determine whether there is actually a stroke or something else going on with a patient. When those images are captured inside that ambulance, they are transmitted via satellite or phone line or whatever technology is in the neighborhood. They transmit those images to the Cleveland Clinic, could be 10, 15, 20, 30 miles away, where a radiologist gets those images immediately and determines this is a stroke, administer the drugs, And what they've been able to find is that they've been able to make calls on whether it's a stroke or not within 11 minutes from the time that they receive the call that they've got the patient in the scanner. The scan is done. Those images are transmitted to a hospital where somebody, an expert, is making a decision as to whether they should administer stroke drugs or not. And that's huge. That has huge impact on medical costs. That has huge impact on people that have a little stroke that survive it and their quality of life after, because they don't, they get the treatment very quickly.
So this specialized ambulance has within it the various medicines, but they're told after these images have been read and the experts have analyzed it, then they're told this is what you need to administer.
Exactly.
And they're in the ambulance with the patient, and they have the medicine, and it's given in 11 minutes.
That's right. So that they know, so that by the time the scan is done, the images are transmitted to the Cleveland Clinic. Experts are reading those images and say, yes, deliver the medicine with the patient right there in the ambulance. So, I mean, that is huge. Actually, the University of Colorado here is going to start one of those programs.
Well, Mr. Keller, I understand that you're a citizen of northeast portion of Colorado, am I correct?
That's correct, yes.
And that your background was anything but in a technical, high science area. Can you give us a little bit of idea all the way through of some of the occurrences in schooling and motivation that you've had to bring you where you are today?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in eastern Colorado called Flagler. It's a farming community. It's about 120 miles east of here. Population of 500 people, 19 kids in my graduating class. I think what got me interested in medicine a long time ago was when I was in the second grade, actually. I broke my arm, but I didn't know I broke my arm. And so my mom and dad drove me to the doctor, which, by the way, was 30 miles away. And somebody took an x-ray. And because of that x-ray, they were able to set my arm, and I have no problems since then. And I thought at that point in time that I want to get involved in medicine. So growing up, I always wanted to return to the small community of eastern Colorado, and I wanted to be an x-ray tech and a lab tech. So there was a program here in the state of Colorado in Denver, Presbyterian Medical Center, to do a 2-year program for radiology technology. And my goal was to be an x-ray tech, to study that. It was a 24-month program, 2 years solid through. Once I got through with that, then I was going to go on to a university and get a microbiology degree and be a lab tech, so that I could go back to a small hospital and be an x-ray tech and a lab tech, because the small hospital could afford one guy that could do both. So that seemed to be like a pretty good plan. So I started off in x-ray, doing radiology, and along the way, as I'm going through my radiology training, I got involved. I had to take 2 years of radiation physics, and I was the only guy in the class that really liked it. In fact, I loved it. I would rather study that than do anything else. So as I'm going through my radiology training, I talked to one of the physicists there, and I said, what did you do? Where did you go to school? And so he told me. So I immediately shifted my plan, and instead of going on to do microbiology and become a lab tech, I decided to finish up my x-ray training, which I did, and I used then being a registered technologist as a means to put myself through school, where I went to Colorado State University and got a degree in physics with a concentration in medical physics. Along the way, as you can imagine, you have a lot of trials and tribulations to try to put yourself through a rigorous program like that. And then the finances of trying to put yourself through school was pretty tough. I was very fortunate that I came across some great people that have aided me along the way, and to this day I always remember them and try to give back in their name. I had just gotten out of X-ray school. I just got out of college my sophomore year, and I needed a job in the worst way. And I happened to be driving from hospital to hospital because this back before cell phones existed, and I would go in and fill out an application at each hospital. Anyway, I had met a radiologist at a convention, Dr. Denny Shalhoub, and as I was at the hospital, I went back and checked, and they said yes, they'd be very interested in having you come in for an interview. So I went up for the interview, and lo and behold, he was there, and he remembered me as an X-ray tech who was going on to school to become a physicist. He was an X-ray tech who went on to become a doctor, who went on to become a radiologist. So he saw something in me. I think that was him, because he was also from a small town. So he demanded that the hospital hire me, and he demanded that they hire me at $1 higher rate than they should have. And so I got the job for the summer, and that job led for a job for the next 4 years, Christmas breaks, spring breaks, summer breaks, that allowed me to put myself through school. And along the way, so I would come down from college and work weekends and then go back up to the school. And so he saw the effort that I was putting into my education and how hard I was working. I remember one particular time, my junior year, I finished up my classes. I've been now working at the hospital for a couple of years, and I had $5. That's it. Filled my car with gas, and so I called Denny and I said, "Hey, Denny," I said, can the hospital advance me a paycheck? And I said, I'm good for it. And so he says, "Come on down, I'll see what I can do." And by the time I drove down, he had already gone into the payroll department. They'd cut a check for 2 weeks in advance so that I could basically meet my needs. I mean, that's the kind of person he was. Then fast forward my senior year, I was going back to school, and he said, when are you going back to school? And I said, "I've got to head back on Friday." And he said, "Okay." And so he comes up to me one day and says, "I need to see you in my office on Thursday." And I said, "Okay." So I went into his office. He said, "Shut the door." And I said, "Oh, this isn't going to go well." And so he said, "Do you have enough money for books?" And I said, "Yeah, books, I've got that covered." And he said, "Do you have enough money for school?" I said, "Yeah, I've got that covered too. I've been budgeting." He said, "Well, how about fund money?" And I said, "Well, that's where things are kind of tight." And he said, well, he reached in his pocket and he pulled out a check for $2,000. And he said, "I want you to take this money and go and enjoy your senior year the way you should go, because what you've gone through these past 4 years of getting your degree and working at this hospital days and nights has been pretty tough." So I looked at the check and I said, "I can't take your check, but I said I will call you if I run out of money, and I'll take it as a loan." But I bring this story up to tell you the kind of people that I've had in my life that I can honestly look you in the eye and tell you, had those kind of people not stepped forward and helped me by just giving me a chance to work, I wouldn't have made it. And so I try then, when I'm here at the rec center, there's been a couple of kids that I've really helped get into the right people to get into medical school, because I know how somebody helped me by giving me that shot. So I then, when somebody finds out that my background, and I have an opportunity to help them to get them in front of the right people. There's a couple of kids that do work out here at this rec center that are they're in medical school now, and I feel like I've been very helpful in that cause.
In all of this, you had your father was in farming, you said?
Yes, that's correct.
And your mother, and any special event in their life and yours?
Yeah, I mean, to put me on this earth, you have to either have a lot of faith in God or something, because what it took to put me on this earth was amazing. I'm the final of 10 kids. And so there was my dad had 9 kids, and then 20 years off, and then me. But what led to me getting onto this earth was in 1952, there was an air show out in eastern Colorado in Flagler. And a military plane was doing stunts in the air, and the whole town was brought in to just watch it. It was a fall festival. And the pilot, when he came around, and he hit the ground, and he tumbled into the crowd, and he killed probably 30 people, of which he killed my dad's first wife, my several half-brothers and sisters. My mom was a nurse. They brought nurses out there to eastern Colorado. She stayed. And 20 years, or she stayed, and 5 years later, after that event, they got married, and then I was born. So it's kind of a unique set of events that put me on this earth. So it's pretty amazing. But then you fast forward and try to take that when you're in college and studying something like physics. My dad kind of struggled with what that might be or what it was. So I was studying at a class called analytical mechanics. And it was a pretty rigorous class that took, a tremendous amount of math just to get into the class. And so I would call them once a week during the Bronco game. I always took breaks during the Bronco game.
And your mother, kind of ironic, was a nurse, you said?
She was a World War II nurse.
And her name was?
Helen Keller. She was Helen Kelly, and she got married to my dad, so she became Helen Keller.
She became Helen Keller, which is part of a very interesting part of the story. Well, let's see, the experience of having been supported by some very influential people, not necessarily all financial, but just by motivation, was really, really great. The program that you've been involved in now with the machine, and which would transmit information to the right people in a very short period of time. What were the major steps that brought it to where it is today? What events in physics in general or medicine in general that you can maybe relate that we would have experienced over the years, some of us would know about?
The technology really started evolving about 15, 20 years ago as more and more information in our personal life became digital. Well, the same thing was happening in the healthcare arena. The first place I got involved with it was the University of California, San Francisco. I was doing some work. And in that particular place, we were starting to beam images that were taken over in Israel. So images that were done, CAT scans and MRIs that were done in the middle of the night, let's say midnight, we were starting to beam them via satellite into the University of California, San Francisco, so they could be read and use the time change. So if you can imagine being in another part of the world, maybe a 12-hour time differential, and you have a patient that has an emergency study, but there is nobody on site to look at those images. But if you've got that data digitally and you can use a satellite and beam those into a group of specialists at the University of California, San Francisco, that patient can have care done immediately with quality top minds. Whereas in the other realm, they would have had to maybe wait for that doctor to come in or a doctor to come in on call.
Was all this sort of across the board from various? See, today hospitals are not freestanding institutions. They belong to a network of other hospitals under whatever name they want to call themselves. And in that period of time, were they all working on the same goals? Was there any problems in the way of competition between hospitals that would impede the movement forward? Or companies like yours had other companies that were saying ours is better? Was there a lot of problem in that area?
Well, for sure, there's a lot of competition amongst hospitals, especially then and even now. And so back in that day, this all started, that beaming of images from Israel into the University of California, San Francisco led to a larger project that was initially going to be built. And I'm not sure who was going to build it, but they were trying to create a university consortium where all of the universities, or the top universities, they would pick out one that was the top in neuroscience, one that was the top in musculoskeletal, one that was the top in gastrointestinal, and then they were going to try to pool all of their resources, even though they're all over the United States, have the images done one place and then sent to the top neuro place or the top musculoskeletal place in the United States, so that they could then present themselves to the community as your images are going to be created and they're all going to be looked at and interpreted by the top minds in the United States. So no matter where you have your study, it could be read. You have your study in Colorado, it might be read in California by the top neurosurgeon or neurologist in the country.
So a certain institution would initiate the machinery to get this information put together. Now, another hospital is not involved or doesn't have connections to a company involved with making the machinery, but if they could use the information, do they have to buy into a program, pay a certain fee to be part of this network so they can receive what's being sent?
So that was the initial beginning. In today's world, every hospital, pretty much in the United States, all has the ability to generate digital data and transmit digital data. So the beauty of this technology as you move forward is if you have a study at hospital A and you need to have treatment at hospital B, even if it's outside their network, the images, you don't have to have the study redone. You can just have the images either transmitted via the internet to the hospital, or you can have the images burned onto a CD and you can take them in. But the goal of the digital data is that no matter where you have the study, you can get that data to a new location where new minds can look at it.
Has this process made a deep financial impact on the operations of all these hospitals?
Yeah, it's obviously not cheap technology, as you can imagine. Now it's gotten better because the cost of computers, the cost of servers, the cost of storage, the cost of networking, all those things have come down in price. But as they come down in price, so doesn't the demand and the load on those servers and the network. So, for instance, systems I would design maybe 10 years ago, they would only generate, let's say, 3 terabytes a year of data. That same hospital might be generating 15 terabytes of data. They're generating more and more data because they're taking more and more, they're getting thinner slices of information. They're basically able to look at you deeper and deeper than they ever could before.
The predominant attitude in your business is that as soon as a machine and a device and a process is all set up and on its way and it's ready to go into hospitals, it's already out of date.
That can be very true, and that's why a lot of times we will build, or I will build in an evergreen design for them, so that we'll design the solution as it puts today, and then we will then anticipate the storage needs and the server needs 3 and 5 years out, so that they have all that covered under their contracting, so that they can kind of fix their costs.
During this development in our history of our country has been tied down in some respects financially, the government, for expenses in different places. The Middle Eastern War, other areas of need, and then the financing for that comes from the federal government, and I'm sure you are involved with trying to get grants and support for that. But has there been any other roadblocks besides loss of financing or threats to loss of financing or ineffective leadership with administrations in the past who don't view this as being important, or any kind of other problem that sort of impeded the progress you felt you could do if these little infractions didn't get in the way?
Well, the Affordable Care Act was something that had a kind of a significant impact on our business, and so I'm the first person to say that I like the fact that all people should have access to health care. I know how important health care is, and I know how important it is for everybody to have the ability to have access to health care. So I think that's an important thing. However, when the Affordable Care Act was rolled out to the hospitals, what happened is their reimbursement rates were reduced because there's many more patients that are coming through the system. So the reimbursement rates were being reduced. Therefore, the hospitals had less money. When they had less money, that led to them spending less money on this kind of technology. So they would ride servers well past their end of service life. They would, maybe not build high availability solutions because the money wasn't there. So, anytime the government gets involved in something, the problem is, they do a good thing for people, but there's a flip side on the other side of maybe kind of impacting healthcare to a point that when the hospitals were investing less in this technology, then our company was investing less, and we actually had to lay some people off. So it's kind of a spiral effect that you can create something maybe good over here and it causes a side effect over here. So I'm not here to say which is the right way or the wrong way, because that's somebody else's decision. But the government can have and does have an impact on how the industry shapes up based on how they reimburse hospitals and therefore how hospitals invest in this type of technology.
What could you say would be your best guess of how this is going to continue to evolve? What kind of future to what you're doing or healthcare in general may we be experiencing within the next 5 years?
I think what you're going to see is this technology is going to help reduce healthcare cost, and that is because the data becomes digital. We're taking the data outside the walls of the hospital or outside the walls of the imaging center. So right now, we're talking about coming in and having a CT and MR and those exams and collecting all that data. Now we have technology that home care nurses can go to your home and take pictures and transmit those images into the hospital. And so so you don't have to bring the patient into the hospital until somebody's looked at the pictures. Maybe it's a bed sore. Maybe it's monitoring of your glucose. Maybe it's monitoring of your blood pressure. So that information can be transmitted in via a cell phone picture or information into the hospital, and then somebody can say, yes, bring that patient in, or no, that's that bed sore is not getting bigger, it's actually getting better, so keep up with the treatment. So I think that the technology is going to enhance and help healthcare get more affordable, because you won't have to bring patients to the four walls of the hospital all the time. You can make a lot of screening decisions at the patient's home. I would also say that I think that this technology is going to lead to better healthcare out in the rural areas, because if you getting physicians out in a rural area is a challenge to begin with. And so if you can set them up in some kind of a telemedicine program where the patient in their small community, like Flagler, where I grew up, can go to their local doctor, can have pictures taken and transmitted into top people here in Denver, or have live video feeds as somebody's looking down somebody's ear and have that information piped back to a ears, nose, and throat specialist here in the Denver metro area. Again, you just bring the data to the best person to make the decision. You don't have to bring the patient to that person. You just bring the data to them.
Last question. There are people of a certain age who are going to have various ailments. This technology seems to be something aimed at that. But a lot of those people don't necessarily want to lose the physical contact with their doctors.
Yep.
A lot of them feel and almost get healed, get better, just by that social aspect of having a family doctor they've known for years. And I can talk about my mother when she was getting older the same way. If they had the right service from the family doctors and that had been involved with all other members of the family and has treated them and been with them, there's something to say about the emotional impact of healing. I'm not going to get into Eastern Indian philosophical herbs and burning insects in the dark room and chanting and things like that. But even that has been shown to be important in healing. So I'm not sure if this thing is going to take a while as the population changes and the younger people who are into technology are more receptive to all this. But there is a concern in that aspect, in my opinion. Have you seen or heard anything about that?
So I don't think there's any concern with that, because I think the primary care physician who you may go to, you will see him or her face to face. What I'm talking about is giving them the information so that if there's an x-ray done in their office or a study performed in their office, that data they can still be front and center with you, but that information can be sent back here to some expert in Denver to look at it. So again, if you're out in eastern Colorado and you have a mammogram with something unique going on, why not have the best person in Denver looking at it? Even though the primary care physician that you're used to seeing every day, you would still see him or her. But behind the scenes, there's this whole team of experts.
So the patient probably doesn't know all this is going on.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we have cases where in surgery where you can prepare for a surgical study or surgical case, or during the middle of a surgery, if something's difficult, you can beam that data to an expert, maybe at Duke University, and that expert can guide the local surgeon in the operating theater around some of the tricky parts of a similar surgery. So again, I cannot tell you how important it is to get this data digital, so that no matter what's going on locally, it can be shared anywhere where the proper person or the best person in the field can have input. And I think from a healthcare consumer, that means that I'm going to get the best healthcare possible. And I have access to not only just mines here, but mines everywhere.
Kind of sounds like the Amazon on medical treatment here. But I really am interested, and I believe it. You're way in the forefront on this, and I think it's worth it all. I think it's worth it. Well, Bill, I really want to thank you for coming and presenting this stuff in a way that it's not too difficult to understand. Transmission of information to the right people at the right time is a big thing in all medical treatment. And it looks like you got this thing going. Thanks again, Bill Keller, and I hope someday that you get, I'm sure you're satisfied with what you do. I hope you get recognition, and your company does too. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.